At Ritual, we know what goes into a magical holiday season. The potluck planning, the gift giving, the spreadsheets. This new year, take a moment for yourself with simple, daily rituals that help you put your foundational health at the top of your to-do list. Rituals Essential for Women 18 Plus Multivitamin is a clinically backed multivitamin featuring 9 high-quality key essential ingredients to help you fill key nutrient gaps in your diet. Or maybe you're stressing your daily protein intake, or you want to double down on support for your gut microbiome. From plant-based essential protein to 3-in-1 pre, pro, and postbiotic strains with Symbiotic Plus, Ritual helps you focus on supporting your body after a long season of juggling everybody else. And for a limited time, do it with 30% off a 3-month supply at ritual.com/podcast. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. At Ritual, we know what goes into the holiday season. The potluck planning, the gift giving, the spreadsheets. So this new year, take a moment for yourself with science-backed support that puts you first. So whether you're focusing on supporting foundational health with a clean vegan multivitamin or supporting your gut health with Symbiotic Plus, do it with 30% off your first month at ritual.com/podcast. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
Yes! I feel like I've been waiting for this my entire life.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Jolly good fun. Jolly good.
Locking down the middle of the day.
America's favorite daytime fun show.
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio downtown in the capital city on this Tuesday. Hope your work week's off to a good start. Appreciate you hanging out with us here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Got Jacob Beck and Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos. And lots to do over the next couple of hours. Mike McCarthy, you see a realistic chance at the next Saints head coach. We'll give that a little bit of a talk in 15 minutes. Glen West, our normal Tuesday spot at 1:30. We're going to have Curtis Wilkinson, covers Arkansas. The Razorbacks will be here tonight for some action in the PMAC between winless teams. So we'll talk about what's going on for John Calipari in his first year up on the Hill. DeMarcus Cooley is committed to LSU. What does that mean for the Tigers secondary? And Sharif Ishaq, 2:30, talking Saints news. So lots and lots to do here on this Tuesday. We'll start this Tuesday same way we start every day, our Genesis opening drive.
It's time for Hunt's opening drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
Jacob Beck, there are some cliches that I really, really don't like. Can you think of any off the top of your head that I really despise?
Oh man,
I'm putting you on the spot. We didn't prep this.
Yeah, let's see. Cliches.
Sharif uses it a lot.
Oh, must win.
Must win. Tonight, January the 14th, fourth SEC game for LSU. Must win.
Wow.
Stamp it. Submit it. It is. It's a must win.
I can't believe it, Hunt.
And I realize that it's actually not in the literal sense. But I think, as of this moment, if LSU goes out there and can't beat Arkansas, who's winless, and didn't beat Vanderbilt on their home floor, who's winless, outside of those games, you've now proven you can't compete in the league. And I realize there are a lot of LSU fans who are sitting here going, I already know they can't compete in the league. Have you watched the last 3 games? And that's fine. But I'm covering the team. It is the fourth SEC game. And we're going to talk about what they've got to do until it's completely irrelevant. And at this point, I don't find it completely irrelevant. But you do understand that after this game, you've got road trips coming up to top 15 teams in Texas A&M and Alabama. Then you come home to take on number 1 Auburn. And if you can't beat Vanderbilt and Arkansas on your home floor, I'm not going to give you a great chance there. That puts you at 0-7. And as we're well aware, 0-7, turn the lights out. That would mean you'd have to win 8 of your last 11 to really feel like you got a shot, and that ain't happening. So you could suggest that they're already cooked based on what you've seen. I'm going to let it play out tonight because I think they've got a real chance to win the game tonight. But I'm putting the must-win label on it, and I don't ever do that, ever. but they have to win this game for anything to be reasonably interesting the rest of the way. Now, how could they win the game? Well, Arkansas has not gotten this thing figured out yet. Now, they've played a tougher schedule than LSU, but they still lost all 3 games. They went to Tennessee and got smoked by 24. They had home games last week against Ole Miss and Florida, lost to Ole Miss by 7 and Florida by 8. They've also in the non-conference got losses to Baylor and Dallas by 5, and they played Illinois and Kansas City and lost that game by 13. It is a talented team. That's certainly not new to John Calipari. When his teams go out there, he's usually got some highly thought of recruits, some draftable prospects, and they do have that. Offensively, they're 82nd in the country in offensive efficiency. They don't shoot a lot of threes, 207th in the country. All this sounds very familiar to John Calipari teams. They're top 50 in the country at 48, and keep in mind anything in the top 50 is high end in a sport that's got more than 360 teams in it. They're top 50 in the country in percentage of their points from 2-point range. They shoot 2-pointers pretty well, 32nd in the country. They do not offensive rebound exceptionally well, 251st in the country. We know how big a deal that is to LSU on the other end, teams just crushing LSU when the Tigers are on the defensive glass. So it's an offense that is predicated, as most John Calipari offenses are, on guards getting where they're trying to get off the dribble. That's what he's done for 20 years over 3 different stops. He was like that at Memphis with Chris Douglas Roberts and Derrick Rose. He's like that at Kentucky with a bevy of different guys, starting with John Wall and all the way through. He's always had guards that are trying to get to the rim. And this year he does. He's got a couple. Boogie Fland, he brought in as the number 1 point guard in the country. He got him to Fayetteville from Harlem, 15.5 points per game. And he leads all freshmen in the nation in assists with 92 assists on the season. Boogie Fland looks to me like a pro. He's 6'2". He's composed. He shoots it pretty well. He sees the floor really, really well. He's a really good player. He is a high level recruit who's kind of running the show for them as a freshman. Then you've got DJ Wagner on another wing. He was at Kentucky last year with Cal, brought him over to Fayetteville, 10.5 points per game, shoots it pretty well. He's 6'4", and a physical guard that will try to get to the rim. Those are the guys that have the ball in their hands more often than anybody else. Now, Adu Thero is their leading scorer. He's another wing, 6'6", 200 pounds, 17 a game. He was at Kentucky with Cal last year, and he leads the SEC in field goal percentage to this point at 60%. You don't lead the SEC in field goal percentage as a 6'6" player jacking up a bunch of threes. Arkansas is a drive it team. That's what they want to be. That's what John Calipari always has, and that's what he's bringing in to this game tonight. LSU is going to have to do a really good job of keeping those guys away from the rim. They haven't done that for 3 games. Hopefully, they can do that a little bit in this game. Defensively, Arkansas has one significant strength. They block a lot of shots. They're 6th in the country in block percentage. They're 4th in the country in blocks per game. They block 6 shots per game. There are 3 guys that they've got who do most of that work. The first is Zvonimir Ivicic, Big Z as they call him. He's a 7-footer. He's huge. The second is Trevin Brazil. You probably know him. 2 years ago, he was at Missouri as a starter as a freshman, transferred to Arkansas last year, got hurt, but he's 6'10". He's an elite level athlete. I thought he was going to go to the NBA after last year. Even with the injury, he decided to stay. He can really block shots as well. And then Jonas Adu, they brought over from Tennessee. He's 6'10", played a lot for Rick Barnes over the last couple of years in Knoxville. And those 3 guys are all 6'10" or taller, and they can all block shots. And that, to me, is a big deal when you're talking about LSU's guards. You're talking about Jordan Sears. You're talking about Cam Carter. Those are undersized guards. Sears is 5'11". Carter is 6'3" and kind of skinny. When those guys get into the paint, you're going to deal with a bunch of trees. So it might be a better situation for LSU's guards to pull up and try to shoot it from 6 feet than to go all the way to the rim and challenge Ivicic and Brazil and Adu and all these guys who block all these shots for Arkansas. You've watched John Calipari teams for 20 years. They all have 7-footers that can run and jump, and they got them again on this Arkansas team. I think that's trouble for LSU around the rim, which means you're going to have to shoot it a little bit better. I wrote a story to preview this game for LouisianaSports.net, and one of the things that I talked about in that preview, I talked about it yesterday on the show when we were looking at the game over the weekend at Ole Miss. I think Mike Williams has got to play a little bit in this game. There's nothing that's happening at point guard between Jordan Sears and Curtis Givens that suggests to me that Mike Williams need to be planted on the bench. I don't think Mike Williams is going to show up tonight and become a run at a first-team all-league player. I don't. But I'm looking at Jordan Sears, who's struggling mightily from the field and from three-point range. I'm looking at Curtis Givens, who at times looks a little bit overwhelmed and like the game's moving too quickly. And I'm looking at Mike Williams, who last year in conference play shot 40% from three-point range and was not a turnover machine. He started like 13 games for LSU last year. It feels like that's a guy who needs to play a little bit. You're playing good guards in this game, and you're playing against bigs that are trouble. And you got to get somebody out there that can make some shots. And Givens right now is not showing he can make threes, and I don't really trust him to get to the rim against some of these guys. At least put some shooters on the floor. Maybe put Mike Williams off the ball and play Sears and Mike Williams and Carter and sit Bailey for a second so you can have three guys out there to stretch the floor and shoot the three. You can't make a living, I don't think, against Arkansas trying to drive in there with a bunch of 6'4" guards. They block too many shots, and you don't have post options that are going to pull those guys away from the goal. At least Jordan Reed could shoot the three at a 38% clip that would make some of those guys go out to the perimeter. They don't have to go out there with Damian Collins. They don't have to go out there with Derek Fountain. Like they're not going to respect LSU shooting the three with the bigs. So you're going to be dealing with the defense that is packed around the goal. You got to have some guys out there that can make some shots from deep. And I would like to see Mike Williams at least afforded that chance. To win this game tonight, LSU is going to have to make 10 or 11 threes. They just are. I don't think you're going to be able to win this game in the low 60s. And I don't think you're going to be able to win this game getting to the rim and creating fouls and scoring a bunch of layups. Arkansas shouldn't crush you on the glass, even though Vanderbilt shouldn't have crushed you on the glass. And you did a pretty good job against the smaller Ole Miss team on the glass on Saturday. I know that's been a big point of emphasis for LSU. I haven't looked at the line on this game. I can pull that up as I'm kind of wrapping things here. But I'll just guess. I'll put myself on the spot. I would guess Arkansas is somewhere in the neighborhood of a 3-point favorite on LSU's home floor. 1.5 is what it is. So not a terrible guess by me. Missed by 1.5. That's basically a pick it. And you're at home. I don't expect any sort of raucous crowd tonight. I think John Calipari may draw some people into the PMAC. But this is a chance. And if you can win this one, you kind of rinse that taste from your mouth and see what you can do over the next three against really, really good teams. You lose this one, as I said at the top of the segment, I don't know how anyone could realistically point a path to this team toward any sort of significant basketball toward the end of February. I think that your hopes for this season, the players are going to play. They're going to play. Your hopes as an LSU fan can end tonight. I think that's my analysis of where LSU is from a talent perspective, from a record perspective, and from a schedule perspective. Tonight, they've got to do something about it. And they can. This is not a great Arkansas team, and LSU has proven it can play with some mid-level P5 teams. Now, you've lost to a couple in the first three games. This is another one on your home floor. 8 o'clock tip-off tonight. Last chance, to me, to get it done. Beck, what's your confidence level?
I can't believe you're saying it's a must-win.
Why not?
Of all people.
What? But look at the situation.
No, I know. It's a valid argument to say that this game is a must-win for LSU. There's no question about that. It's just coming from you. I'm just a little surprised. But
I think that it packs a little more punch when you don't ever use that term.
It's true.
And then you bring it up.
Yeah, certainly does.
Here they are. They had one last time I said must-win would have been LSU Florida football.
Yeah.
After Bama, you were still kind of mathematically available based on the tiebreaker. And I think all that stuff ended up happening for LSU. All the chalk actually held, and they could have, if they had won the game against Florida, theoretically made themselves relevant in December. But they didn't. And let's see what LSU basketball can do tonight in the PMAC. That's our opening drive. What you got?
I was gonna say we saw a LSU team beat John Calipari last year. So
we did. Tyrell Ward at the buzzer.
Not playing.
Look, y'all. He is not. Y'all know. I think most people know how I feel about John Calipari. I would enjoy a meal or a beer with John Calipari because he's probably got stories for days. I don't think he's a bad guy. I think his day in college basketball has passed. His trump card for a decade in Lexington was that he was the best recruiter. However you want to slice that. He's gotten in trouble two different places for it, but he was the best at assembling all the talent. And once everyone else caught up to that, namely Duke, who started taking all those top guys, it just never really worked out again. And like last year, he had a really talented team and couldn't do anything with it. I just don't trust him to accumulate the talent necessary and then to coach it. I just don't think he's the elite level. And I think Arkansas is in for a lot of 4 and 5 star recruits over the next 4 or 5 years, and a lot of seasons teetering on the bubble of the tournament. Like, I think that's where Arkansas is headed, and I think that's probably the case with this team, which I don't think is going to make the tournament. But we'll see. They do have some talented pieces, and you'll see them on display tonight. That's our Genesis opening drive. All right, do the Saints have a new target, maybe top target in this coaching search? We'll talk about it coming up next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Highland Insurance Group. HighlandIG.com is the website. I was actually at the Highland Insurance Group this morning chatting with their entire team. They're sharing some old war stories from the insurance days, and they were telling me about some of the successes they've had recently, one of which they found a client that had 5 different buildings, and every building had a single general liability policy on it, and all the buildings were wrapped up into one general liability policy for $1 million. What they were able to do is rewrite the policy to get $1 million per building, so $5 million of coverage for the same amount of money. That's the kind of thing that they do over at the Highland Insurance Group. They're experts in the insurance game, specifically with coverages. And sometimes it's not about cutting 18% off your insurance premium, because that's really not realistic. But what if you can improve your coverage, put your business in a better spot for the same amount of money? There's value there. That's the kind of thing that they do, and that's why they win business over at the Highland Insurance Group. Contact Jonathan Carbo and his team. They're fantastic people, and they're great at what they do. If you don't have a great feel for what your insurance program does or what options may be available to you from an insurance perspective, the Highland Insurance Group is a great place to start. They're online at HighlandIG.com. They're right here in Baton Rouge. It's the Highland Insurance Group, HighlandIG.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Glen West talking Tigers in 15 minutes. Talk about LSU football and certainly preview LSU basketball tonight as well. Looking forward to that conversation. I'll say this. I have enjoyed the early portion of this Saints coaching search. Y'all realize, obviously, that the Saints have hired one coach in the last 20 years. So we don't do this a lot. And I can't claim to be like really locked in when the Vikings or the Chargers or the Commanders are hiring a coach. Like, tell me when it's announced, that's fine. I'm not really paying that close attention, but I am paying very close attention, obviously, to this one here in New Orleans, because we're covering it here. And Ross is doing a phenomenal job at LouisianaSports.net. You're kind of staying, and it's as public as it's ever been, with a lot of the teams around the league publicizing their interviews after they're completed. They'll tweet out, "We just interviewed this guy," so you get a sense for like really where teams are kind of looking. And I think it's important that we evaluate the other searches in the league as the Saints progress in theirs. And you're reading tea leaves here. We don't know anything because there's only been one coach hired, and that's Mike Brable with New England. But the tea leaves are starting to suggest, the reports are starting to suggest, that Aaron Glen may be leaning towards the Jets. We don't know that, but that's kind of where things start to lean. So you certainly keep Aaron Glen bookmarked over here as someone that's a possibility, and the Saints have already talked to, but you start to survey the rest of the possibilities. Absolutely, Joe Brady's name continues to surface here for the Saints. And now you've got a new name added to the prospect list as Mike McCarthy has parted ways with the Cowboys. And the question becomes, is this a good fit for New Orleans? I'm torn on it. I'm leaning one specific direction, and I'll tell you where that is after I kind of lay out the situation as I see it. Mike McCarthy does have ties to the New Orleans Saints. He was the offensive coordinator 20 years ago in New Orleans, and he was the offensive coordinator already in place as Mickey Loomis became the general manager. Now, Loomis was already with the organization, but as he became the general manager. And so there is some connective tissue there. I'm not sure how strong that is 20 years later, but that's something to consider. And Mike McCarthy has essentially been a head coach in the NFL since 2006. That's when he took over at Green Bay, and he rode through Aaron Rodgers' prime there. They won that Super Bowl back in the 2010 season, and they were a perennial playoff team. They made the playoffs every year from 2009 to 2016, oftentimes doing so as division champions. They won the NFC North in 11, 12, 13, 14, and 16, finished second and won the wild card in 15. In 17, they were 7-9. In 18, started 4-7-1. He was released from his duties there. He sat out for a year and then joined the Dallas Cowboys, where after a 6-10 first year, they made the playoffs 3 years in a row, winning the East twice with Dak Prescott. So you're talking about a lot of playoff runs here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 runs to the playoffs over the course of his head coaching time. 1 Super Bowl and a perfectly even 11-11 playoff record. Mike McCarthy is a good football coach. I don't know how you could argue against that. I guess you could try to suggest that he had a top 10 talent all time at quarterback in Green Bay and rode him on the backs of a division that had the Bears and the bad Lions and the Vikings in it, and just kind of got in and then got beat by whoever it was at that point in the playoffs. But that's a stretch to me. It's really hard to win in the NFL, and I don't know a lot of coaches who have taken pretty crappy quarterbacks and won a ton with them. All the great coaches that you can point to over the last 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, the great coaches have had really good quarterbacks. It's just part of the deal. And no matter who the Saints hire, if they don't get quarterback figured out, the Saints aren't going to be that good. Like, you can Ryan Tannehill it, and the Titans won a few games for a couple of years with Tannehill there. But more often than not, the teams that are really good, and therefore the coaches that are considered to be really good, are guys with great quarterbacks. Mike Tomlin's record in the playoffs is a lot better with Ben Roethlisberger than it is with everybody else he's taken up there now. That's just the way it is. Sean Payton was better in the playoffs with Drew Brees than he's going to be with Bo Nix right now. And Andy Reid's really good in the playoffs with Patrick Mahomes, and he had a really good run in the playoffs with Donovan McNabb. And the list goes on and on and on and on. So what I'm trying to say is, I'm not here to take away from Mike McCarthy because he had Aaron Rodgers. And I think going 12-5, 3 straight years with Dak Prescott is impressive stuff. Yeah, Washington was a mess. Yeah, the Giants are usually a mess. Philly's been pretty good. And he's been one of the best teams in the NFC, the lesser conference, up until this year when Dak got hurt. So I think he's a good coach, and I think that it would be a good hire if New Orleans hired Mike McCarthy. Is it as exciting as Ben Johnson might be? No. Are there a lot of people in South Louisiana with such fond memories of Joe Brady that look at what he's doing right now, by the way, with Josh Allen, and think that's the next new guy? That's the guy that's got the goods. It's not as exciting. No, it's not. He's 61 years old. He's got some warts because he's been doing this a long time. And those coaches that have never had the opportunity don't have any of those. They're just the hotshot coordinator who've never run an organization. But with Mike McCarthy, you're going to get a guy who knows how to put people in place, who knows how to manage an organization and win a lot of games. And maybe you could suggest that his record's bad in the playoffs because his teams aren't good enough to compete with the elites. Again, there are no perfect candidates here. That rarely happens. When Scott Woodward needed a women's basketball coach, there was a perfect candidate. And it was a guarantee when he hired Kim Mulkey that LSU was going to be great at women's basketball. That just doesn't exist a lot of places. So what you have to do is analyze the pros and cons of each and kind of weigh them. And as I started looking deeper into Mike McCarthy, whose teams are always in the top 10 in passing, rarely in the top 10 in rushing, but usually win a lot and are quarterback dependent, I think there's a chance there. Now, I'm not huge on Derek Carr, and I don't think Spencer Rattler and Jake Haener are the answer. And now you start to talk about a guy that's 61 years old that's going to have to get a quarterback the next offseason and potentially develop him. But I think you've got time, and I think that he's a guy who's shown he can get really good quarterback play. So Ross Jackson's got a piece up at LouisianaSports.net right now that calls Mike McCarthy the top target. He says that because he thinks Aaron Glen is leaning towards the Jets. I think that's good. I think there's a chance that Mike McCarthy could do some good things in New Orleans if given a little bit of a leash. Not the sexiest hire in the world, but I think it would be a good hire for New Orleans as they move forward. That's kind of where I am on it. I'll be honest. When I started, I was kind of negative, and then I started to really consider everything and go, you can try to take the really super high ceiling, or you can take the high floor. And McCarthy has got a really high floor. I think there's realistic reasons to believe that would be a good direction for the Saints to go. We'll just have to see as this shakes out over the next couple of weeks. If you're looking for Saints coverage, you can always find it on YouTube at Hunt on Saints. That's available wherever you find your podcasts as well. Beck, your thoughts on Mike McCarthy as the candidate for New Orleans?
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit yesterday, and I was of the opinion that Aaron Glen would be the top candidate, and for the same reasons, I'll say that Mike McCarthy would be as well, because he would be a very high floor, possibly low ceiling hire for the Saints in terms of he's been proven as a head coach. He most likely isn't going to have the same issues that Dennis Allen did, because Dennis Allen was never a head coach before. And we saw a lot of flaws in the way he tried to just develop a culture of that team, and the way he handled certain scenarios, especially the Falcons' last game of the season. So it makes a lot of sense why he would be a top candidate, and I think he is. I think he would be for the Saints. It's just it would follow a lot of the same hallmarks that we come to expect when it comes to the Saints and their decision making.
I was trying to think of a comp. And one that came to mind, kind of random, but Rick Barnes. He won a lot at Texas, won a lot. They never won the national championship. He had some really good teams, and Texas kind of got sick of it.
Yeah.
And then Tennessee was like, all right, he wins a lot, we'll take him. And then all of a sudden he's rocking and rolling there in Tennessee. You could also very much go to John Calipari if you're going to do the same type deal. Calipari won the one with generational talent and Anthony Davis, and it just kind of got stale and it just fizzled. And maybe that's the case here. You never know. That's kind of the point. You never really know. But I could get on board with Mike McCarthy for the New Orleans Saints. All right, let's talk some Tigers. Glen West, senior writer 24/7, with us next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge. GenesisofBatonRouge.com is the website. Every car that's on the lot at Airline and Pico is online at Genesis of Baton Rouge, from the sedans all the way up to the SUVs. The entire line, given the IIHA top safety picks, some of them top safety picks plus. I've said this now for a few weeks, but as you're driving around, just give a look. You'll start to notice more and more Genesis on the roads, and that's because they've got such an unbelievable reputation. Get on by and see for yourself. Get behind the wheel of one, not just behind one on the road. Get behind the wheel. Let one of those brand ambassadors take you on a test drive. You can do it from the dealership. You can do it remotely. They can bring that car right to you at your office or your home. They're happy to do it. And every single Genesis that you purchase comes with a 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty. And it comes with 3 years of complimentary maintenance. That's just part of doing business over there at Genesis of Baton Rouge. As I mentioned, they're on Airline near Pico, across from Women's Hospital. Fairly new in town. Get on by and check them out. It's Genesis of Baton Rouge. The entire line is online at GenesisofBatonRouge.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
All right, rocking and rolling on a Tuesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. I opened the show talking LSU and Arkansas hoops, and I did something I never do. I called it a must-win. That's one of the most overused cliches in all of sports. It very rarely applies, and I admitted it quite literally does not apply, but for all intents and purposes, if LSU does not win this game, any hopes of playing for anything significant as February moves on are just not really realistic. And that's kind of where I am as LSU and Arkansas get ready to go at it tonight at 8 o'clock from the PMAC. Glen West will be there. He's a senior writer at Go 24/7. He's with us on Tuesdays. Glen, how we doing?
You use must win. I think I wrote do or die. I mean, I think I did that last week, and I think we're just in that kind of boat right now with this team.
So I said this, and I put this in the story that I wrote to preview the game. Like, I'm not 100% sure why Mike Williams doesn't see any time, considering that LSU's point guard play hasn't been great, and he has shown the ability over a year in Baton Rouge to at least make some shots. Do you think there's a chance he plays a little bit tonight?
I think he can create his own offense, and I think he's somebody that, absolutely should be more involved. I was listening to the Matt McMahon show last night. Sounds like he's going to get an uptick in minutes tonight. He'll be involved in some capacity more than he was in these previous 3 or 4 SEC games. So, I think he's somebody that needs to see the court more, especially the way things have been going. Wouldn't hurt. I mean, you got to find some offense, you got to find some creation, and he was somebody that I thought also held up well defensively last year for you too. I think he was among the team leader in steals, and so not sure what kind of led to this downturn in terms of his role, but now I think all bets are off. I think Matt McMahon has to just throw everything he's got out there and see what sticks. And Mike Williams seeing more playing time certainly kind of makes a lot more sense here going forward.
When you watch this team and you see the turnover numbers pile up, is there anything that stands out to you?
I mean, just sloppy passes at some times, and then other times it's just these guards are getting into LSU's guards and not giving them much breathing room at all. And I think you're seeing just, I don't want to call it panic, but you're seeing just some careless play as a result of that. They're getting double teamed. Their length is a problem, I think, right now. I mean, Jordan Sears is not the longest of guards, and he's getting pressured probably like he's never been pressured before by some of these SEC teams, and it's leading to some of those mistakes from him. Cam Carter, I think, has been asked to do more offensively than he's ever been asked to do in his career, and I think you're seeing that be a result of some of the mistakes he's made. You can go down the list there of some of the perimeter players. Curtis Givens and Victorious Miller are true freshmen that have never played in this kind of high intensity environments, week in, week out, or game in, game out, I should say. So, I mean, look, the source of the turnovers has primarily been from your backcourt, but I mean, that's not surprising. Those are the guys that have to create shots for themselves and for others. But what you're seeing is a lot of these SEC teams get a lot of pressure on them and be physical with them, and it's certainly rattled them here in these first 3 games.
Here's a question that you can't really ask in a press conference, but I can certainly ask you. I mean, how much could Jalen Reed have helped?
I think a lot. I mean, I think he could have helped you, especially in the post, give you some kind of presence down there in the paint. I mean, they have zero presence in the paint right now. I mean, Damian Collins is a guy that can get you a couple putback dunks, can maybe hit a perimeter shot every once in a while, give you a nice floater here and there. But he's not somebody you build an offense around or construct offensive scheme around. And Jalen Reed, I feel like, was. And he was starting to show that before his injury, that he could be a reliable piece in the paint to kind of back guys down, grab offensive rebounds and give LSU second chance opportunities. They don't get many of those either. I think he really could have been a big help for this team. I mean, the fact of the matter is the turnovers have kind of canceled out any positive that LSU's had on the court in these first 3 SEC games. And I don't know how much of a factor he could have helped in that respect in terms of limiting turnovers. But as far as a post presence, as far as rebounding, defending and protecting the rim a little bit, I think he certainly would have been a big boost. And I probably could have helped LSU win that Vanderbilt game at the very least.
All right, what do you see tonight? Arkansas comes in here winless with a little tougher schedule, but they haven't really put it together as a team yet in John Calipari's first year. How do you see it going tonight?
I mean, this is a winnable game for LSU. I think this is one of the more beatable opponents they have on their schedule here going forward. Arkansas doesn't really do a ton really well. I mean, I would say they block shots really well. I believe they're number 2 in the conference right now in block shots, so they could protect the rim some. But they don't do anything. In my opinion, that kind of jumps out on the stat sheet. I believe they're kind of in the middle or at the bottom of most of the statistics right now in the SEC, and they're kind of in a little bit of a rebuild mode. But at the same point, you can also argue that LSU doesn't do anything particularly well. So this is going to be it could be a sloppy game tonight. It could be a game where the team that takes care of the ball the best in the second half wins. But LSU has just got to find something that they can really lean on here over the next week or two, because the schedule is just going to get absurdly hard with Auburn coming up, Alabama coming up, A&M coming up. Like they have got to find something that they can count on. And I would love to see somebody like Victorious Miller get going again. I'd love to see Mike Williams come in and score some points for him. Limit the turnovers as much as possible. I know we're beating a dead horse here with that, but it's really the biggest problem with this team right now that just doesn't seem to be fixable. So if they can go from 17 turnovers to 11, or 10, I think that's a sign of progress to me. But at the end of the day, I think we're talking about a team that, they have to win this game, but if they don't, it's curtains on their season. And I think that's kind of the way that this has gone these last couple weeks.
All right, let's talk some football. Tamarcus Cooley commits to LSU from NC State. How does he fit into the secondary?
I think he's a great option for you at safety. I mean, a guy who can come up and help stop the run. He graded out really well last year at the run at NC State. So maybe you put him as a strong safety, and you have Deshaun Spears, Javian Toviano, Jordan Gilbert kind of battle it out for that other safety spot. But what I really think it does is it allows LSU now to maybe not feel the pressure of moving a guy like Mansour Delane around a whole ton. I mean, I think you can maybe focus him now solely on corner. Not that they weren't going to do that beforehand, but I just think there was some more versatility there if they hadn't landed a safety, for them to be a little bit more kind of open with what they wanted to do in that secondary. But I think, look, in an ideal world, I think Mansour Delane, DJ Pickett, now that you've added Tamarcus Cooley, and then one of Toviano, Spears, or Gilbert, gives you a pretty solid secondary next year, at least on paper. And you got a bunch of other guys like Jakeem Jackson and several of these younger players, Ashton Stamps, and guys like that can certainly develop and continue to grow their roles as well. So I really like what LSU's done in the secondary. Cooley, to me, just kind of feels like the finishing piece. We'll see if another safety kind of hops in and LSU wants to make a run at them, then they certainly, I think, have the resources and have shown that they can go do that and be aggressive with that player. But Cooley was a really big upgrade, I think, for you at the safety position because of how physical he is at 5'11", 205 pounds, and his ability to tackle and help stop the run.
Do you think, we've talked a lot, or I certainly have talked a lot about the talent level in the secondary the last couple of years. Do you think that they're towards a championship level in terms of talent in the secondary, or they're just moving in that direction?
I wouldn't go that far until we get a chance to see them on the field. Yeah. I mean, I certainly think that on paper, this is a playoff caliber secondary, a team or a back half of the defense that can certainly not give up as many big plays as they have in the first couple of years with what they've done. So, yeah, look, I think this is a good step in the right direction. But again, we have to wait and see what these guys look like at Clemson, what they look like these first couple weeks of 2025 before we can kind of make any sweeping decisions. But on paper, I think they look like a playoff caliber secondary to me.
I'll see you at the PMAC tonight. I'm not going to buy a Coke tonight. I'm gonna opt out. I'm gonna opt out.
I think it's 50% off. Actually, the Tuesday games, everything's 50% off. I did see that on the sports LSU basketball social media account. So.
I will consider that. I appreciate the
get some half off popcorn or something instead.
We'll see you in there tonight, Glenn. Thanks.
All right, thanks, hon.
You got it. He's Glen West, senior writer. Go 24/7. All your team coverage, all your recruiting coverage. Beck, we get there's an ice chest, or there's a fridge downstairs for the media.
Yep.
And there's Coke Heavy in there.
There is, of
which
course,
is delicious, very tasty. I was trying to go zero. They didn't have any.
No Coke Zero.
So I went and purchased one.
Well,
and I just felt as though because there is free available to me that I may have overpaid for the Coke.
Well, Hunt, I think I covered the basketball team a couple years as well. I think we both know that if you had a talk with Kent Lowe, he may be able to supply you with some Coke Zeros, possibly.
Look, I appreciate that, and I might. Kent's got a lot on his plate. It's a game day. He's got to be worried about what's going on the scores table, getting the stats, running the rest of the guys around. He's setting up press conferences. I don't want to overload Kent with my beverage options. I will say there is ample amount of Coke Zero in the football press box and in the baseball press box. Basketball is just gone with the heavies.
Yeah.
And trust me, I love a Coke Heavy. It's very tasty. I was just trying to be a little bit better.
That's good on you, Hunt. To really, I mean, I think you can get that. I think you can maybe get that. Somebody can help you out with that.
We'll see what we can do, because I just don't know that when you look at the fact that I have free available and what I did pay for that souvenir Coke,
not worth it.
It was not a great investment on my part.
No, it's definitely not.
So we'll look into cleaning that up this evening at the PMAC. All right, let's come back and close out hour number 1 coming up next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com is the website. David Duvall and his team, 30 years redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. Closet space, not something we think about like a ton, at least I don't, but certainly my wife does. And when she moved into our first house, just was not really digging the closet situation. And at that point, I could have called David Duvall at One Bath and Closets, but we knew in the very short term we were going to be moving. So when we did move, we prioritized our closet space, and it's made a huge, huge difference. If you don't want to move but want to deal with your closet space, I've got the spot for you. It's One Bath and Closets. David Duvall and his team do completely customized work for you, and you can check it out at onebathandclosets.com. It's functional, it's customized, and it is aesthetically pleasing as well. They do beautiful work over there at One Bath and Closets. And whenever I meet with David Duvall, I always am impressed. He always brings us up. Like, we do it right the first time. We're not going to make some quick decisions, get through as quickly as possible, get to the next job, and then come back after 3 months when something's falling apart. Never going to happen. They're going to do it right the first time and leave the competition behind. It's David Duvall and One Bath and Closets. Check them out online at onebathandclosets.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
All right, wrapping up hour number 1 here. I wanted to hit on a couple of hot topics on the NFL side of things that we wanted to kind of squeeze in here. Didn't want to take away from our chance to talk about the Saints and LSU, because they're not local storylines, but a lot of times we do that at the end of hour number 1 here. The talk about Mike Tomlin now is really heating up. The Steelers obviously lost to Baltimore, and they were dusted in that game over the weekend. They have now lost 5 straight playoff games under Mike Tomlin since reaching the AFC Championship game back in 2016. And as you know, Tomlin's never had a losing season, and the last few years, 10-7, 10-7, 9-8, 9-7, 12-4. They've been competitive, and they've won a lot of football games, but they're not winning in the playoffs. And the question is, should the Steelers move on? And while I did just talk about the merits of Mike McCarthy earlier, and the fact that he wins a lot of games, and Tomlin's had an even better track record than McCarthy, but my issue with Tomlin's playoff losses are that they are not stopping anybody, and he's a defensive coach. McCarthy's teams, at least, are among the NFL leaders offensively every single year, and the Steelers are struggling on defense. I'm going to give him a pass that Justin Fields and Russell Wilson and Kenny Pickett and whoever else that they have are not great players at the quarterback spot. I think it would be difficult for anybody to win a lot of playoff games in that conference with Lamar Jackson. I mean, the playoffs he's lost, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. Like, it's tough. Now, you go back to 2020, they lost to the Browns. Okay, that's a little bit of a different story. But I think Tomlin's a great coach. I'm a little concerned that his defense isn't stopping anybody, and then you've got to solve quarterback in Pittsburgh. So you either have to figure out what you're going to do at the quarterback spot, and I don't think it can be Russell Wilson or Justin Fields, and that's hard to rectify, or realize that you're just not going to be very good, and I don't know that it's Mike Tomlin's complete fault. It's one of those situations where I think the Steelers are fine to do whatever they want. If they want to move on from Tomlin, I don't think that's crazy. If they want to keep him, I don't think that's crazy. But you have to understand that, like, you got to do something with that offense and figure out how to throw the ball a little bit better than they have since Roethlisberger left. Now, the other big topic is Sam Darnold in Minnesota. I do have strong feelings on this one. There is no chance I'm giving Sam Darnold a long-term deal, even though it's going to be mid-tier for quarterbacks, just like the Tampa Bay Bucks did with Baker, just like the Saints have done with Derek Carr. It would be in that mold. I'm not paying Sam Darnold that. I'm not strapping that much money to a guy that I think is mediocre. If I've got to have a quarterback that I'm going to attach a long-term deal to, I need him to be one of two things: a proven stud, which never comes on the market, or someone with a high ceiling. And Sam Darnold's ceiling is just not high at all. And I think you're chaining yourself to mediocrity by giving him a long-term deal, especially when you've got a first-round pick on the bench. Like, if you were going to have to find a way to get one, like I'm talking about with the Steelers, like the Saints or situation, like that changes the calculus a little bit. The Vikings have a lottery ticket on the bench that they thought enough of to draft, and you've got a great offensive coach as your head coach. There's no shot I am giving a substantial amount of my salary cap to Sam Darnold on a long-term deal. No chance. Thank you for a wonderful season this year, a great regular season. Won 15 games. That's awesome. Maybe 14 games. Won 14 games. That's awesome. Collect your $35 million a year from someone else, and we're glad we gave you that opportunity. We're going with JJ on the rookie deal. That, to me, no-brainer. I'm not chaining myself to mediocrity. And that is what you would be doing, in my opinion, by going with Darnold. I mean, those last two games, just about all I need to see. Those last two games trump the first 16 to me. Non-competitive against the Lions, non-competitive in the game last night. I've seen enough. You kind of knew that, and you caught lightning in a bottle, and that's awesome. But while you've got the talent that they've got on that roster, Darnold is a complete no-go for me. I'm not sure what they're going to do. It feels like it's Kevin O'Connell's call. He knows what those guys look like in practice. But I got to go with the rookie. You drafted him, you got to give him a chance. And again, I'm not a guy that was a big J.J. McCarthy backer as a high first-round pick last spring. But you got him. So I'm not going $35 million a year for Darnold. That's a no-go for me, sir. All right, that's it for hour number one here on a Tuesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. If you missed any of the show today or any day, you can always catch it on demand, and we are all over the place as far as where you can catch us. Wherever you find your sound, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, wherever you find your sound for podcasts, you can find us there. You can also find us on YouTube. We've got different channels that are specialized. If you're looking for LSU football, Hunt on LSU. That's all football. Looking for Saints, Hunt on Saints. That's all Saints. Looking for basketball? I don't know who you are. You're looking for basketball? Hoops with Hunt. All those are available wherever you find your sound. So if you subscribe to those, you'll get the short 10, 12-minute segments that just deal with that topic you're looking to catch up on. So please do that for us. We certainly do appreciate it. We're going to pause for Sports Center. Tons to get to in the second hour. DeMarcus Cooley has committed to LSU to play defensive back. What does that mean for the rest of the guys in the defensive back room? Where does he slide in? I'll talk about that at 2:15. Sharif Ishak talking Saints coaching search at 2:30. When we come back on the other side of this Sports Center, Curtis Wilkinson covers the Hogs. They're desperate coming into Baton Rouge, into the PMAC tonight. We'll talk about it. Coming up in hour number 2 of a Tuesday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.